A doubt. There was never a doubt that the USA team was going to win that game. We are now headed to the medal rounds. We have France playing USA in the gold medal game, and we have Germany versus Serbia in the bronze medal game. So today we're going to start with the France-Germany game. Charlie, what were your thoughts on the game?
I think we talked about this before the quarterfinals, that we just weren't too optimistic about France. And I don't know about you, but for me, the perspective on this team has completely changed. And a lot of credit goes out to the coaching staff for making the adjustments they did, mainly putting Rudy Gobert on the bench, playing more through their bigs, and it's made them really good, obviously beating Canada and Germany, who were the two notable favorites to make it to the final on the side of the bracket. Yet now we just have France. And their defense has been the main thing that's really stood out to me. Coming into the tournament, I think a lot of people were like, if you look at this defense, you have Gobert and Wemby, but it's really, I think, their versatility and switchability to hold two teams that were scoring almost 90 points a game in the group stage, Germany and Canada, to 73 and 69 points.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing we couldn't expect is that Gershon Yabusele would turn into Charles Barkley. I mean, he's arguably been the second best player in this tournament. I think LeBron's been the best, and I think Yabusele's been the second best, which
That's
I don't
insane.
think. I don't think anybody expected. Tipping my cap to Danny Ainge. What a pick! I know he never succeeded in the NBA, but he's really paying off now. And I agree. I think that shout out first France's coaching staff. My favorite Frenchman, Kenny Atkinson, and I think how they were able to bench Gobert. They even benched Fournier, and they put Ntilikina in the starting lineup. They put Cordier in the starting lineup. And I think that really helped unlock Yabusele because he was able to play his natural position at the 4. I think Wemby at the 5 is their best option, best defensive player in the tournament, best defensive player in the world. And I think they were much more like able to move and switch better than they were. They didn't have the fear of Gobert. And I mean, did you hear about the whole thing with Gobert's finger?
Oh,
so
it's insane.
So Saturday, Gobert hurts his left ring finger, and in an interview with the press says that he got surgery on it and that he was lucky he was even able to play. Immediately afterwards, his coach says that Gobert did not get surgery and it was actually an MRI, which two completely different things. And do you think that this was like a misunderstanding by Gobert, or do you think this was him trying to give reason for why he wasn't playing?
I don't know. It's really interesting because, why lie? But also, it's Rudy Gobert, and we know he's kind of not the most secure guy when it comes to how he is perceived. He cried when he wasn't an all-star a few years back, and he isn't afraid to voice his opinion against what others think about him. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is him trying to say, I played 3 minutes against Canada or whatever the number was, and here's why. And clearly it backfired, or there was some misunderstanding, but I feel like I lean that it's, him trying to say, oh, I didn't play because of this, when it really was matchup based.
How many minutes do you think he played against Germany?
5.
How many minutes do you think he played in the second half?
He probably played less than a minute because he only came in to get the rebounds.
Came in for one rebound. That was it.
Yeah.
That's all he played in the second half.
And it was the right move.
And they tried subbing him out. And remember, they put him underneath the other team's goal so he wouldn't get fouled at the end of the game. That's how afraid they were of having Rudy Gobert on the floor. And, I mean, he's the third best big man. I mean, I love Lesor. Lesor is a dog.
Yabusele, Wemby, and Lesor.
That is true. Lesor's a dog. Lesor should be in the NBA.
Him and Yabusele. Get them both in there.
Cordier should be in the NBA. He's gonna end up on the Spurs somehow. I just feel like Pop's been at all these games. He's just watching. He feels like such a Spurs player. And now switching to the Germany side, I think that this was a failure for them. coming into this game, they had won 12 straight games in international play. They won the gold at the FIBA in 2022. It looked like Franz Wagner and Dennis Schroeder were the best duo in all of international basketball, and they just completely collapsed after the first quarter, especially Franz Wagner. He scored 7 points in the first quarter and then only had one bucket in the fourth. And while that was a clutch three, it was immediately negated by him turning over the ball when they were up two, when he or down two, just fumbling the ball out of bounds. And it was just a terrible performance. And it's kind of starting to add to this idea that Franz Wagner is a bit of a choker in these big games.
Yeah, falling down with the ball that was brutal. And I think with the two struggles, I think a lot of the credit still does have to go to France's defense, because I think their switchability, especially Yabusele and Lesor, they're big bodies who could also move. So it's hard for Schroeder and Franz Wagner to get downhill. Like Schroeder led the entire tournament with 8.8 assists per game entering the game, only had 4 this game. It was just really hard for them to get downhill and, for Schroeder to really operate in the pick and roll because of France's defense. So I think, ultimately that is what caused this Germany defeat. And also, they really couldn't make shots. Like, I have a hard time seeing how Germany could have played much worse than they did today.
Yeah, and I mean, even with how poor they played, they were in the game at the end.
Yeah.
Which was pretty shocking. I mean, they were down 10. They cut it to 2. And it felt like when Franz grabbed that rebound, it was like, oh, they're going to tie this game. And then he just falls out of bounds. And there was that kind of suspicious call at the end with the jump ball where I'm still not sure that's a foul. And I wish we got a replay on that. And I personally thought it was a jump ball, especially with how physical they've allowed these guys to play in FIBA. I just was really surprised that they didn't call that a jump ball, because Germany would have got the ball back, and I feel like they would have scored there. And I think it was such a bummer to see German Steve Nash fail.
German Steve Nash.
It's one of the things I don't understand is how these guys are so good in international basketball play. A guy like Dennis Schroeder, who, I mean, when you watch him play, he looks like a top 10 point guard in all of the world. And then you watch him in the NBA and you're like, this is not even remotely close to the same guy. And I mean, is it like a pace thing in FIBA? Is it like, I guess the competition's not quite as good, but even then he just looks so much better. And it doesn't make sense to me how a guy like that is so starkly different.
Maybe Dennis Schroeder just needs to join the expansion team Sonics and he just gets the whole offense to himself, and maybe we do see Steve Nash numbers from him.
That is a good segue into another thought that I had. This Olympics has been the greatest proof that the NBA needs expansion. I think that there is flat out too much talent in the world right now for only 30 NBA teams, for only 390 roster spots across the league. I think that the league is simply too talented. I mean, even look at the bottom feeders of the league. You look at the Pistons. They still have 5 or 6 guys I really like. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Amen Thompson, Ron Holland, Isaiah Stewart. They still have guys that I like. And I think a guy like Cordier should be in the NBA. A guy like Lesor should be in the NBA. A guy like Dennis Schroeder should be a little more prevalent on an NBA team. And Yabusele could be on an NBA team. I think there's so many good players that aren't in the league right now because there's just simply not enough spots. And I think that now that this new CBA is done and this new, TV agreement is done, I think we're going to be seeing expansion really soon. I think we'll see that Las Vegas team. I think we'll see the Seattle team. And I think that we'll finally have a little more bad teams in the NBA, which is something we kind of need because I feel like all these teams are just flat out too good.
Yeah. I love the point about the talent around the world because I think France, more than possibly any team in FIBA's history, is exemplifying that because with all due respect to their NBA guys, Wemby's been great defensively, hasn't been able to find the rim. Same with Nick Batum, who's been great defensively. But it's really their overseas guys that are, getting them these wins. And like you said, there's like 3 or 4 of these guys you could just watch, and you're like, that's a guy who could be in an NBA for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just really surprised. And congratulations to France for advancing, the first host team to guarantee a medal since 1996, when it was in Atlanta and USA won the gold. And I think that this was an insane run that they've gone on, and their coaching staff deserves all the credit. I think Cordier deserves all the credit. I think Baselli deserves all the credit. Wemby's defense, which has been insane. When he lost the ball against Canada and Nemhard tried to throw an outlet pass, and Wemby just goes go gadget arms to reach the ball and takes it and just scores. That's the most insane thing I've ever seen.
He's so long. Like, you shouldn't be able to do
Pause.
that. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, you shouldn't be able to do that. And France will be playing the USA in the finals.
Go America.
That was the single greatest win in U.S. Olympic history. And looking back on it, I think that there's only one game that comes close to it, which is the 2008 gold medal game against Spain that the U.S. won 118 to 107. And I do think that game kind of meant a little bit more because it was coming back. That was the Redeem team. They had lost in 2004. And it was a really big deal that all these guys came in to join the team. It was Kobe putting up 20 points in that game, him beating Pau Gasol, them beating Spain, who felt like the biggest threat to them. A great Rudy Fernandez game, by the way. And I think
Legend.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was the biggest U.S. win since having pros. And I think that we just witnessed an even greater win.
In talking about the game, that fourth quarter itself is one of the greatest quarters I have watched in my life of basketball. Not just, international basketball, not just the Olympics, not anything, any basketball. That was absolute cinema. You have these legends, Curry, LeBron, KD, all playing obviously, or not obviously, but most likely their last Olympics. You never know with KD, he loves coming out. Mm-hmm. But they combined for the last 13 points. They all have like their moment in overtime, whether that's LeBron just like getting out in transition. Curry, obviously 36, the second most in Olympic history for Team USA, only behind Carmelo in 2012, and Durant with that ice cold midi.
Oh, straight hoops.
Yeah.
That last bucket, that was like, hey, I'm the greatest U.S. Olympic scorer, not the greatest Olympic scorer. I'm the greatest U.S. Olympic scorer. I'm going to get that bucket. I'm going to win us this game. Mm-hmm. And I was so happy that he had the ball in that possession. I know Curry had been cooking. I know LeBron's been one of the best players for this team. But I think when it comes down to the moment, Durant's the closeout guy. And I was really happy he had the ball. And we do need to take a moment. We have crapped on the guy a bunch. That was the best Joel Embiid game we've gotten so far. 19 points, 8 for 11 from the field. And he was putting constant pressure on Jokic in the second half. Jokic had 4 fouls. He had to play a little more conservative. Jokic has been a great defender throughout all of the Olympic Games, and he really couldn't do that in the second half against the U.S. because he was playing with the 4 fouls. And I think Embiid deserves his flowers. He had that big poster in the third quarter that helped spark the first run, getting them close. And I do think, though, that this is the Steph Curry game. You were hearing throughout all of the qualifying matches, oh, when's the Steph Curry moment going to come? He was slumping, and he could not have picked a better time because in that first quarter, no one else could score. No one else could buy a bucket except everybody with the last name Itch, which is the entire Serbian team, who could not miss. And there was one point where they were both 50% from 3 going into the half. And that was solely because of Steph Curry, who could not miss. And he was the only reason that they were within 17 points, which is how many points they came back from. And I just absolutely want to tip my cap to the greatest point guard of all time.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Embiid scoring 7 straight through, I think like midway through the fourth was definitely huge. There were some rebounding lapses, but he 100% made up for it on the offensive end. And obviously the team was able to close it out. And with Steph, at one point in this Olympics, I think it was after the second game, he was only the third Team USA Olympic player since NBA players were allowed in 1992 to be shooting under 30% from the field for the Olympics. And, I feel like at that point you're like, all right, well, when's the regression to the mean? When is he going to have the game? And it was absolutely when Team USA needs it because, this game could have been a blowout if Steph Curry was not there.
And, I think it was the greatest performance in a game. Like, Melo's 37 was cool, but that game wasn't.
He did it in 12 minutes because the game didn't matter.
Yeah, the game was
12
close.
minutes is awesome.
Yeah, 12 minutes.
Yeah.
That's cooking.
Yeah.
But, that's a blowout. And, this was, a meaningful 36.
Mm-hmm.
When they were down 2 late in the fourth quarter, he hit the 3 to give them the lead. Then he got the ball back, hit a layup to make the lead 3. And it was truly him who kind of gave him the cushion at the end. And, I think LeBron was really big, had a triple-double. But I think the big thing for LeBron is he was the one who brought the energy. And I think you could see how much it meant to him. Especially when Bogdanovich did the 3 to the head right to Melo, and LeBron was really upset. And I think that's when you saw a shift in his mentality. He really tried to go out there and prove why the USA is the greatest team that we have possibly ever seen. And it was just amazing. This whole game was amazing. This is why you watch basketball.
Yeah.
Is why I think.
It was LeBron's second Olympic triple-double, making him the only player in Olympic history to have 2 triple-doubles in their Olympic career. And I think he was I've said this 3 times about people, but his ability to get out and transition at the start of the fourth quarter, I think, was huge for Team USA overcoming their huge deficit. I think in the fourth quarter they outscored him 32-15. Yeah, 32-15. And I think it all started with LeBron and KD and Booker just getting out in transition. And obviously LeBron is leading those breaks like he has been for this entire Olympic run for the Team USA.
And I think that's why it was so shocking in the first half, because they weren't playing that defense. They weren't scoring either. They're a transition team. They're a defensive team first. And they just flat out weren't playing defense. They were getting open look Serbia. They were getting so many offensive boards. It was really just easy for them to score. And I think in that fourth quarter, you saw they pressured the guards more because Serbia really didn't have anybody besides Bogdanovich and Jokic who could bring the ball up. So when Micic brought the ball up, Ibrahimovic brought the ball up, they were really pressuring them and getting it out of their hands. And I think that was the big change that allowed them to go get those easy buckets, get them back in the game. And that's what this USA team is all about, being fast, playing quicker. And another thing that surprised me was 0 Jason Tatum minutes.
Yeah, I thought he would have gotten a shot if, we started down slow.
I really thought he was going to come in at the end of the second quarter when it didn't really feel like anyone else could get anything going. I was really surprised that he didn't get any minutes, and I think I'm just really shocked that he hasn't played because we talked about it before the tournament. Tatum felt like he was the fourth best guy on this team. It felt like he was going to be in the closing lineups. It felt like he was going to be playing those big minutes. And I feel like Devin Booker really took his spot. And I think that the really interesting thing that you see in these USA games, when they play these close games, you really see who the top 5 guys are. Those are the guys who stay out there. And we could see that it was Curry, it was Booker, it was Durant, it was LeBron, and it was Embiid. That's who Kerr's these are my 5 guys. I'm going down with these 5 guys, which if you told me at the beginning of the tournament that Booker would have been in that lineup, I would have never believed you, but he has earned it with how he's been able to play in that role, with how he's been as a defender, a slasher, a shooter. He's done everything that I thought that Jason Tatum was going to do for them. And I feel like there's a story behind why Tatum isn't playing.
Yeah. I think Booker's ability to be the perfect 2 guard next to your 4-man unit of Curry, LeBron, Durant, and Embiid is really an underrated part of this team for sure. And I was really happy to see an actual close lineup or close game with the closing lineup because Team USA has not had that yet. disregarding the exhibitions, of course, and finally getting an extended run of Curry, LeBron, and KD together. There were just short glimpses of it in other games, but finally getting it in meaningful minutes was great.
I just love seeing those guys play. Just when you watch the top talent in the NBA and then you see them come together, you realize why these guys are the greatest. Some of the greatest guys to ever lace them up. KD, the greatest international player ever. And it was just, this game was just like everything you could possibly want out of a game.
Yeah.
I do feel bad for Serbia because, I think that was the best punch a team could have ever given to this team. And they were just on fire, and then they just didn't make a three in the fourth quarter. And I think it goes to show you how the modern NBA is with shooting variance, with how three-pointers can allow teams to stay in games like this. Serbia was just on fire. They could not miss, and that's how they were able to stay in this game, to build up that big lead. And then once you can't make them, that's what happens. It kind of reminded me of the 2018 Rockets when they went 0 for 27 in the fourth.
Yeah. Serbia, you go 0 for 9 in the fourth quarter and lose by 4. I feel like, that's the clear story of the fourth quarter for you.
Mm-hmm. It was as simple as they couldn't make threes. And, they had a couple good looks in there. I remember they had one wide open one, 15 off an offensive rebound, and he just threw up a knuckleball and missed. And, that was one that they were cashing out in the first half. And, when you miss threes like that, you can't. You can't when you're playing a team as talented as the U.S. And I think looking forward to how the U.S. matches up with France, what do you think that game looks like?
I think the U.S. wins, and I agree with what you said about Serbia giving the U.S. its best run, because France doesn't really have the shooting that Serbia has to be able to put up that type of shooting display. Of course, there's variance, so maybe they just do catch on fire. Maybe you get a huge Evan Fournier game, for example. But I do think it'll be interesting to see their switching scheme against the U.S. They have big bodies that are able to move, like we mentioned earlier. So I expect them to keep that going. And physically, Yabusele is big. He's 6'8", 270. Yeah, he's about LeBron's size. So, I'm interested to see LeBron trying to post him up. I think that could be a really interesting matchup.
I am excited to see how Yabusele plays against this team because he has been on fire the whole tournament. And I wonder, if I'm the USA, that's the guy that I think I have to go after, because Wemby's really struggled offensively. Mm-hmm. And who knows, maybe we get the Wemby game in the finals. That's still looming. He kind of looks, though, like early rookie season Wemby on offense, where, he's kind of getting bullied down low. He's not getting the ball. And it's really been kind of, disappointing, I would say. Because he was so good in the second half of his rookie year that I thought that it was going to really continue over. And he was 4 for 17 for today.
Tour date.
And he goes 1 for 2 from the line at the end when the crowd was chanting Wemby. And I think that's the big thing. And that's the big advantage that France has. This is their home court. They are going to have everyone behind them. And I think that if they're able to feed off that crowd, I know that'll help a lot with those kind of streaky players like a Fournier. That'll be big for him to have a home crowd. And I'm just curious if France is going to be able to score enough. They're very Cordier, Yabusele dependent, and I feel like those are guys that the U.S. matches up really good against. And I don't think France is really going to be able to hang with the U.S.
Yeah, I think this is a game where we could definitely see the return of a Bam AD front court. Obviously saw it a lot in exhibition games with those two coming off the bench. I've seen it, I think, less and less throughout, especially with Bam only playing 9 minutes and AD playing 10 against Serbia. But I think throwing those two at France's front court combinations, whether it's Lesor and Wemby, Wemby and maybe Gobert we see play more, or even if it's just Lesor, Yabusele, we saw, they have so many front court options that they could go to. And I think Bam and AD are like a perfect defensive duo to kind of slow those guys down because of their mobility, their athleticism, their ability to contest at the rim, and their post defense. I think those two are like the perfect defenders to slow down how France has really been able to get their buckets.
Mm-hmm. Now, over under 2.5 Rudy Gobert minutes.
Oh, that's a great line.
It's got to be under. I think he gets a DMP.
Really?
I don't think he touches the court.
I don't know. I mean,
I
if
think
they go down, I feel like they have to throw him in there, right?
no. Why would you throw him in if you're down? He's not going to give you any
That's true.
offense.
They've only been better when he's been
I know.
benched.
I really don't understand. Like unless it's somehow a French blowout, I don't really know how Gobert gets in this game. Or I guess if the USA's blowing him out, he gets in garbage time. But I really don't think Gobert is going to touch this floor. I think that they're going to rock with their guys. I think it's going to be like a 7-man rotation where it's going to probably be like Fournier and Lesor as the two guys coming off the bench. And that's it. And like that's kind of what France needs to do. They need to put all their eggs in the basket, just go out swinging, and they have to start hot. Like if that's one thing we've learned, the USA starts out pretty cold. Like if you look at the Puerto Rico game, if you even look at like the first Serbia game in the qualifying, like they are prone to slow starts. And I think that if you're France, you got to do what Serbia did, and you got to get like a 10-point lead early. You got to come out, hit your shots, and then just try to hold on for dear life. And I think that's probably their pathway to winning. Other than that, like they can't play a close game against the US. Like they just, when it comes down and they lock in on defense, the French ball handlers are too bad. Like Drew Holiday is going to lock them up. Like Anthony Edwards is going to hound them. KD's been a really good defender. I think Curry's putting in good effort. LeBron's been really good defensively.
So is Booker.
I mean, they have all been really good defensively. And I think that the number one thing that the U.S. will probably work on for next game is crashing those offensive boards. I don't think that France is going to get those easy looks that Serbia did on the kickouts. And I think that the USA is just really going to clamp down, and I think they had their scare here. And this is where you just get laser focused, and you're like, we cannot lose this. We are going to get this gold medal.
Yeah. I think France really has to hope that their defense is just really locked in because the offense just isn't going to be there. You need Wemby to be an absolute force. You need Isaiah Cornier to just, try to hound whatever guard is on the court. You need Yabusele to be physical. You need Ntilikina to be a good point of attack defender. Shout out Nick Batum. He's been really good defensively. So I think that's
Fourth
also
quarter yelling.
Why the bitumen? Anyway, I think they're not going to be able to keep up with the U.S. offensively, so they're really going to need to slow them down. Hope for some bad shooting luck from the U.S., but I think the U.S. will win pretty comfortably.
And I don't mean to take my victory lap early, but I am so happy with my Serbia take. I said that they were going to give the U.S. their best game, which they did. And barring France pulling off a huge upset, I think that take will hold true. And I think we should maybe take a moment to talk about the bronze medal game, Serbia versus Germany. I mean, this game's still going to mean a lot because Germany's never won a medal in Olympic Games, even with all the great players they've had in their history and this really good team they formed. I think that they're going to still play super hard. I think that they'll beat Serbia because I think it'll mean just a little bit more to them. And the bummer, thinking about it now with Germany, the fact that they don't have Isaiah Hartenstein on this team. It's because they have a rule where you have to play with the team the year before in order to play with the Olympics. But I feel like I would make an exception for Hartenstein because I feel like they were really missing a guy like that, like a big who could get boards, who could put some actual size on a guy like Wemby, or even a guy like Yabusele. And I think that's something they were really missing. And they were also missing Maxi Kleba.
Yeah. I think what's insane about Germany is from 1936 to 2021, they had 3 medals in their history, counting the Olympics, the World Cup, and Eurobasket. And if they win on, what day do they play? Saturday? Yeah, if they win on Saturday, in the past 3 years alone, it'll be their 3rd medal. So through the first 85 years of them playing competitive basketball with their national team, they will only have won 3 medals, but they could have 3 in the last 3 summers if they are able to get a win. So like you said, I think it's going to mean a lot, and I agree that they are going to win, or they're at least the favorites for me as well. And I like the matchup more for Germany. Serbia has good guard defenders, but I think that France's defense was more equipped to slow down Germany than Serbia is. And what's really interesting is this is also a rematch of the World Cup final from last summer, except now you add Nikola Jokic into the equation. But other than that, it's almost the same cores. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Obviously, Germany won that in a close game last year. So I think it's just an interesting part of this game is that these teams are pretty familiar with each other based off last summer.
Mm-hmm. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and discuss if this is the best USA basketball team we've ever seen. All right, coming back, we're trying to decide what the greatest U.S. team to ever be assembled is. So we're going to start with this 2024 team. We have Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Halliburton, Drew Holiday, LeBron James, Jason Tatum, Derek White, and coached by Steve Kerr. So another one of the contenders we have is the 2008 team with Carmelo Anthony, Carlos Boozer, Chris Bosh, Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, Jason Kidd, LeBron James, Chris Paul, Tayshaun Prince, Michael Redd, Dwayne Wade, Darren Williams, coached by Coach K. And lastly, we have the Dream Team, 1992. Charles Barkley, Larry Bird, Clyde Drexler, Patrick Ewing, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, Chris Mullin, Christian Laettner, Scottie Pippen, David Robinson, John Stockton, and coached by Chuck Daly. So I think we need to start with the clear third place, but it does deserve to be here, which is the 2008 team. And I think that the real struggle with this 2008 team is that they had really no bigs. I mean, they had Dwight Howard, who was really good, coming off a Defensive Player of the Year. He ends up making the finals in this year, I believe, the 08-09 season. Mm-hmm. He makes the finals. But that's really it. I mean, their only other big man is Chris Bosh.
Yeah.
And although he's a great stretch five, I mean, I don't think that's exactly matching up with the other ones. But this team definitely has the star power. They have LeBron. They have Carmelo, one of the greatest international players ever. They have Kobe, and they have Dwayne Wade.
Dwayne Wade was the best player on that team.
Dwayne Wade was awesome in this run. I mean, he was truly special, like amazing. And so was Darren Williams was really good in this run. Jason Kidd was really good in this run. But I think they kind of lose it for me at the end of the bench too. Like Tayshaun Prince, Carlos Boozer, and Michael Redd were all getting DNP'd in these games. But I still think they deserve to be here because I think they're clearly the third most talented team that we've ever sent to the Olympics.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Obviously the top end talent is there, but then you get to the end and you're just like, is this team really the best Team USA team ever? And I think we agree now.
Mm-hmm. But I think this was a really important game for them. Coming off the 2004 loss, the only time they've lost, and they have not won a gold medal when sending pros starting in 1992. I think that it was a real big deal. There was the whole documentary about it, how these guys, they got the best players this time, not just a few of them, everybody.
Yeah, I think obviously the Olympics is the biggest thing for Team USA, but even in 2006 World Cup, they didn't win gold. So it had been since the 2002 World Cup, I believe, was the last time the U.S. had won gold in a major intercontinental competition. So this was just huge for them, and obviously absolutely dominant throughout the whole tournament. So great team.
All right, now what everybody came for. The 2024 U.S. Olympic men's basketball team is the best U.S. team to ever be assembled. Now, going head-to-head, the three main stars on both those teams, for 92, you had Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird. And for 2024, you have LeBron, Steph, and KD. And looking at that 92 team, let's be honest, Magic Johnson was washed, Larry Bird was washed, and Jordan was entering his prime, and I think out of those 6 players, he's the best. But I think Curry, LeBron, and KD would be 2 through 4 when you stack all those guys up, which is why I think the 2024 is the best team ever assembled.
Yeah, and I think those guys are 2 to 4, like, very easily. You know, Bird had his back issues. Magic had AIDS. They just, you know, they weren't, like, you know, you have that iconic picture of those three, but Bird and Magic were not, obviously they're considered 2 and 3 on that team, but like they weren't the second and third best players for that team. Obviously you'd have David Robinson, who was really good, really getting close to his prime. Scottie Pippen, Clyde Drexler and the Blazers were very good at that time. Karl Malone and John Stockton obviously would make the finals a few years later. Charles Barkley was in the prime of his career. The Suns made the finals in 93. So it's like a very deep team, obviously. But I think Magic and Bird obviously get way too much attention. I mean, it is deserved because, you know, they ran the 80s and, like, revived the NBA. But
we done with the 90s.
We done with the 90s.
Look at the guys who were leading in minutes. You have Charles Barkley, 19 minutes a game. Chris Mullin, 21. Clyde Drexler, 21. Michael Jordan, 23. Scottie Pippen, 21. And I think when you compare that against the guys who are getting those leading minutes for this team right now, you have LeBron, you have Curry, you have KD, you have Booker, you have Embiid. Those guys, I think that they're outperforming that 92 team. And I feel like if I was to put a number on it, I would say that this team is like 15% better. If I had to give it like if I had to just give it a number, I think that's what it looks like. And I think this team does also suffer from having to carry a guy like Christian Laettner, who was doing nothing for them. And then if you look at the guy who's at like the end of this team's bench, it's Tyrese Halliburton, who is worlds better than Christian Laettner ever was.
And is coming off the conference finals and is a top 6, 7, arguably top 5 point guard in the league.
Oh, easily top 5.
Yeah.
Easily top 5. And like, I just think if we could go in a time machine and we had the 92's closing lineup where we have Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, and David Robinson going head-to-head against Steph, Devin Booker, LeBron, KD, and Embiid, I think that 2024 4-2 if it's a 7-game series.
Yeah, and I think, you know, some people might try to say, oh, like, look at this team's point differential. It was so much better. But you have to consider the fact the world has, you know, caught up to the U.S. International basketball is so much more talented, like 15 times more talented. So you can't just say, oh, this team had a point differential of this throughout the tournament, whereas this team did this. Or, like, you know, Team USA had to come back against Serbia. You know, 1992 Dream Team did not have to face any issues like that. I think there were a total of 9 other NBA players on other teams in that tournament, whereas this year I think it's the total number of current or former NBA players is close to 80 or like 83 or
There's got to be 9 on Canada alone.
Yeah, so it's just a completely different environment. So I don't think you can just go numbers for numbers, and I think comparing the rosters evenly like we have been, it just leans the 2024 roster's way.
And I'll be curious to see, as talent continues to grow, if like the USA will continue to have this gap, because in our lifetime we've seen this gap dramatically close, and I think there's gonna come a time where there's a country that will be more of a powerhouse than the U.S., in my opinion. And I don't think that it's a lock that USA is always going to be this dominant force in international basketball, especially as these international guys grow up playing with these rules. They grow up playing with these guys more. They have more familiarity, and I think that's going to become more and more valuable as the talent gap lessens and lessens.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point is that these guys grow up playing youth FIBA competitions, whether it's, U16, U17, U18 together. So they really get a feel of playing with people of their generation. And a lot of international players will play for their international teams every summer, almost every summer, whereas Team USA, throws guys together. So, maybe in 10 years, we're looking at a Team USA that plays 2-3 summers in a row together so that they can really, actually be top tier contenders for gold. Because I think even in 2028, I don't think it's crazy to say Team USA is nowhere near a lock for gold. So it's really a different generation, and I'm really curious to see how that changes. What team, out of curiosity, do you think could be the new powerhouse? Because you said it could not be the U.S.
I mean, I think that we're a decent ways away from that. Like, I think 20, 30 years from something like that. But, I mean, you got to look at Canada. I feel like they clearly have the number 2 most NBA talent outside of the U.S. And who knows? There could be a country like, what if a country like Serbia has 2 guys like Jokic come out at once? Like, that's kind of more the route that I'm thinking. A European country who just has 2 massive stars at one time, who are going to be in their primes, and there's a much more clear hierarchy with a team like that. Like, imagine if, like, Bogdanovic was Luka Doncic.
Well, Yugoslavia was both Serbia and Slovenia. So if that never fell apart,
we would have Luka Doncic.
I think they would beat us.
They would beat us. I think they would beat us too if Luka Doncic and Jokic got to play on the same team. And, like, I think that they would dominate us. Mm-hmm. And I think something like that is closer to happening than not. And I think this is also a product of, like, how basketball players are brought up in the U.S. with the AAU system. Kind of, they don't learn this team fundamental basketball that really benefits in this European setting. And I think that these European guys are going to continue to grow up the right way. And if you look at the MVP voting, 4 out of the top 5 players were internationally born players. And it's funny, the one guy who wasn't on the U.S. team, Jalen Brunson. He finished 5th and wasn't on the USA team. So I think it's really clear how this talent gap is going to continue to get smaller and smaller, and I think it'll be, before we know it, I mean, looking at that 28 roster, there's going to be no KD, no Steph Curry, no LeBron.
Concerning.
No Embiid, I would say. It's going to be like Tatum, Ant, Cooper Flag, like guys like that who are going to need to step. Bam. Probably no AD by that time. Like, a lot of these guys are going to be aged out by the next Olympics, and I mean, Luka Doncic is going to be right in his prime. What if another guy from Lithuania all of a sudden makes the league? Or even then, like an older Jokic. Jokic should be like 33.
And his game's going to age so
well. And I mean, they're going to have like Nikola Topic back. They're going to have Jovic. They're going to have Bogdanovic, who would still be in early 30s.
Yeah.
And like, look at all these international guys. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Serbia beat the U.S. in 2028. I mean, Canada, as disappointing as I feel like they've been throughout like this kind of window they've had. Who knows? I mean, they'll have Zach Edey probably in the next game, which
they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, like, I think they'll be really good too. And I think the team that we could see regress heavily would probably be Germany. I don't think that they'll be quite as good as they were. Yeah. But then, I mean, who knows? Who knows how good these countries can be? I mean, they've really continued to like show up and show out. And basketball is a global game now. And I think that that's the story of this whole Olympics, is that basketball is now a worldwide sport.
Yeah, I think it's very evident how quickly a country could go from bad to good or good to bad. For example, you have South Sudan, who just became a country 13 years ago. Now they're in the Olympics competing at a high level. Or you have a team like Argentina, who was second in the World Cup in 2019 and then failed to make the 2023 World Cup. Failed to make the Olympics, losing to the Bahamas last summer in the pre-qualifying. Like, so much can change. There's so much uncertainty. And yeah, like, you know, in no world, I don't think someone should be saying, I would bet money on the U.S. winning gold in 2028.
Which is a much different world than we were in. Because, I mean, even look at that 2020 roster that they rolled out. I mean, JaVale McGee was on that team. Keldon Johnson was on that team.
That team was bad.
Zach LaVine was on that team.
Kevin Durant absolutely
carried.
saved that team.
Kevin Durant and Drew Holiday, forever thank you, too, for that team. But, I mean, even then it got, like, dicey there, and they thought that they could roll out a bad team, and then they rolled out a bad team in 2022, and what happened? They got smoked. They lost. And
Fourth place finish, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of, I feel like what inspired this 2024 team a lot was how bad that 2022 team is. And I mean, I'd probably bet on them to lose the 2026 FIBA. Like, I just don't think these guys care enough for that tournament.
27,
my bad.
No, I agree. I think the U.S. should care more about the World Cup.
Walker Kessler. Forgot that.
Oh my gosh. That team was atrocious.
The only guy to ever go from Team USA to Summer League in back-to-back years.
That's an absurd stat. I think Team USA needs to start caring more about the World Cup in a similar vein to what Canada did, because Canada really wanted the transition from the World Cup to the Olympics to, get that chemistry. Obviously, didn't work out ideally, only finishing 5th in the Olympics this year, but I think that might be a route that Team USA has to try to take sooner rather than later to get these guys more comfortable playing with each other as it becomes more and more competitive in the Olympics.
And I almost wonder if they'll start setting aside like younger guys. Like, I was really happy to see like Cooper Flagg on the select team. And I wonder if that select team to US team is going to become more of a pipeline in the future. And they'll kind of set aside a certain group of players who are younger, maybe not the most talented guys, but that can kind of work together. Like maybe the 2028 team, it's like Brandon Pojemski's on it, Cooper Flagg's on it, guys kind of like that who are like not quite as good as those top tier talent. I mean, Cooper Flagg might be, but will like learn to work together.
I think that's the most important thing.
I think that could be the future of U.S. basketball rather than these big stars coming. Maybe it's like one or two big stars and then a bunch of good role players, which I think is kind of a better team build, and I think will benefit them more in a European basketball setting.
I agree.
All right, so I think that's all we have for the Olympics. The gold medal games on Saturday.
3:30 p.m. Eastern.
3:30 p.m. Eastern. Something to look forward to. And thank you for listening, and enjoy some games.